We're fortunate to have as our guest the Honorable Peter Van Loan. He is a prominent municipal planning lawyer and expert and a partner at Aird and Burles Law Firm in Toronto. Peter, welcome to the program.
Great to be with you.
So I guess my first question is, can you, in your own words, describe the nature of the affordability crisis or issue or problem? I don't want to put too much drama in there, but what's going on out there?
Well, it's your show's about economics. And I think when anybody took economics back in high school, they remember that perhaps on the first day, you learn something about supply and demand. It is really as simple as that. They have put in place a tremendous amount of regulation that's made it impossible to deliver sufficient supply to the marketplace. And demand keeps growing up because the population keeps growing, largely because of immigration in the case of the Toronto Census Metropolitan Area and Ontario generally. So it's really simple. Too much demand, not enough supply, prices go through the roof.
So just unpack that for our audience a little bit. What sorts of regulations have been put in place over the last few years that have driven this supply crisis?
There are lots of them, and I'm fond of saying that the housing sector is curious in that it is the most regulated sector of the economy in Canada. You would think that maybe, approving new drugs might be more serious, or perhaps new medical instruments, or perhaps automobile safety. No, the most regulated sector of economy is actually delivering new houses. And I didn't think houses were that dangerous, but they're regulated through provincial plans, through things like the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which I'll talk a lot about in Ontario. They've got similar plans out in British Columbia, for example. And then there are provincial policy statements. There's all kinds of provincial regulations. You have to go through environmental rules and watershed planning. There's official plans at a regional level, official plans at a local level. Then there are zoning bylaws, there's site plan control, there's subdivision control. If somebody has a good piece of land and they want to develop it and it's in the right place, everything's right. And they line up and start the process to get it from, a piece of farmland that's about to be developed to development. It's going to be at least 10 years. A lot of it takes longer than that. And that's all because of the tremendous amount of regulation. And one of the symptoms of it is that in a sector where you think, for the economy to work well, you need competition. Well, in the housing sector, the development sector, increasingly, because it's so complicated, there are fewer and fewer of what you would call small developers, small players. It's become impossible to succeed unless you're very well resourced and very, very sophisticated about cutting through all those regulations to succeed. So you've also got a limited number of players in the marketplace. All these factors are coming together to limit supply and increase prices.
Yeah, so take us through, for the average developer, who do they have to have on staff to wade through all these regulations?
Well, a lot of them have them on staff, but you also still have to go out and get consultants. You have to get lawyers like myself. You have to get land use planners. You have engineers, traffic engineers, servicing engineers that deal with things like sewers and sanitary stormwater. You have environmental scientists, also usually engineers, who deal with some of these stormwater management plans or master environmental surfacing plans, they're called. And I could go on and on with the technical consultants and bore people, but you need a veritable army of these folks, good people in-house who know how to bird dog files and chase them. And the time, effort, energy, all, of course, adds to the cost as well. Never mind the end troubles of actually building when it comes time to build. Things like you have to do archaeological studies to figure out if anything ever interesting happened on this land before. There's just a whole raft of considerations.
So in terms of what they're facing, has this burden, we got about 30 seconds before we go to break, but this burden has increased, would you say, maybe exponentially, but increased a lot in the last few years then, is that right?
Well, I worry less about the burden and more about the restrictions on supply. And that's what I'd really like to get onto in our next segment. And that would be what has happened that has made it so hard to build a new home? What have the governments done that have made it impossible for those who want to deliver housing to actually be able to do it?